Very good morning to all of you. It's an honor and a privilege to address this august body. My expectation is that by the time we are done, this will give you an idea of what we do as architects and help in understanding the role when you want to start building your church. So, this is my topic, architectural and design consideration in church property development. The architect, in fact, mimics God. That's what we do. And I'll show you that we are supposed to create from apparently nothing. So we stare at that parcel of land and we listen to the client and we construct things in our mind and we're able to put together an idea and turn it into a building. Can we go to the next slide? So this is part of the work that's done. This gentleman here recently won the highest award in the whole world as far as architecture is concerned. He's Kere from Burkina Faso. Can we go to the next? So this is what I mean. So whilst you look at the land, whilst the client tells you this is what I want, and so on and so forth, it gets to a stage where you have to imagine something like this, where you have to do it, where you have to turn it into something which is feasible. And then from there, you can go to our engineers who support us in making it work. I'll go through this and then I'll come in some more detail later on. Can we go to the next slide? Building a worship space is not only a construction project, it's a journey of faith for the architect. It's a responsibility that elevates the meaning of professionalism to a new plane. So the church building itself is such an illustrious assignment that when you go through history and you look at what happened, the first few architects, we trace them all the way from Egypt. The king's main body was the architect, and plus some religious men. So that's all. All decisions were taken from that level. So it's the architect who decides that, okay, we should build a pyramid. Looking at our king and listening to the spiritual leaders, we should build a pyramid. And it doesn't matter if 50,000 people die, we build it, and so that, oh king, you may live forever. And so the power of the architect was just tremendous because he was literally second to none apart from the king. And over the years, that power has diminished and has been resized to meet the needs of the modern world. Now, the highest power is what we call the star architect or star architect. So after Egypt, it went on and on to developments in the various ages from Greece to Rome, and all that was tied. The civilization was related directly to the style of architecture. And that's why Greek civilization, you had a particular kind of architecture. Roman civilization, another kind of architecture. So it worked there and there until we got to the Michelangelos, who had to work with high people in high offices, with high commissions to deliver a certain category of projects. Can we go to the next slide? So the biblical perspective on all this, because I'm speaking to people who come from that background as well, you can take it from Exodus, where Moses was trying to build something for the Lord. And very clearly, a gentleman was selected for that job. He is the first record of who would call an architect. He was given very special skills, and Moses had to work hand in hand with him to deliver this temple of the Lord. It's a very serious assignment. He had to be filled with the Spirit of God, and in wisdom and in understanding and in knowledge of all manner of workmanship. That was what qualified him to build this church. That's why my first statement of saying that building the house of the Lord is a very high and elevated opportunity as a professional to work with. If you look at the history of churches and you continue going on, you get to some which just illustrate this very carefully, and I'll show one or two pictures that will help us. The architect is so key that I'd like to suggest to everybody that never build a church without an architect. I know some have been built with building committees, some makeshift architect, or indeed, even the pastor himself. Let's go to the next. And this is the scripture. I've worked with pastors who literally use this scripture. I can do all things through Christ who strengthens me. And this is wrongly interpreted. You cannot do all things. I put it to you. You see, and that's why we have teachers, we have apostles, God knew what he was doing. Different gifts for different people. And from my experience working with some pastors, there's very high pastors in the land here and out of Ghana, you get that slight, it's an attempt to be an architect at the same time. But we understand the correlation of a lot of times God gives the vision, the initial vision to the head pastor. So sometimes you see, he comes to you and tells you, I have a vision of this place. What I saw myself holding 7 mics, and I was speaking to 1,750 people. And he starts telling you that. And then you look at the congregation, and maybe they are just 150. Then you look at the parcel of land, and you realize it's just one plot. But he's telling you that vision. And so as an architect, what you have to do is to gently guide him to place. And it's not always very easy because that vision keeps recurring in his mind. So why use an architect? Why use an architect? So in the next following slides, I'll talk about it. There are some very common design errors from inexperienced designers. And note here, I've said designers. The designer, anybody can encode design. Just like you can walk to the pharmacy and self-medicate. But this is such a serious assignment where you take money from the church, where you take money from probably the Kelewele seller who has been coming. It's God's money, and you have a strong need to make sure that the money is used very well for this kingdom business. It's very easy to do something which seems like a building of a church, but it's not well articulate. And what I tell people is that you can do the same thing for less and less efficiency. Great experience is required to get great results. So there are ways of organizing a room like this. You can do the same thing. I'm not criticizing anything, but I'm just saying you can have something like this even without columns. So for example, we look here and there are columns. I have to look to the side to see who is there next. Typically, we would avoid that, but sometimes you do it for the sake of it. So we would avoid that and tax our brothers, the engineers, to dream big and make it happen. Yeah, so this is how we work. Our work is to guide you. And sometimes, I know they look at it, oh, let me just take a student who just came out of university 2 years ago and get him some 2,000 Ghana and tell him, I'm just trying to do something small. And that's one of the biggest mistakes you can make. So the thing all of a sudden starts growing beyond what you thought. The young architect himself is overwhelmed by what he's seen because he doesn't have the experience to see the end of the story. And so, like you, he's surprised at every stage and grappling with what to do. This particular assignment must be done by a seasoned professional all the time. And we also, because of our training, there are two professions which have the longest training, the doctors and us. Indeed, we spend about the same time. A proper architect, by the time you are done, you have about 10 years in school and in the office. And even that, we say you are a young architect. So architects who are up to 50, you are a young architect. Because you need experience. You need to go through the mill. You need to understand what you have to do. I always tell my students who I work with that when you come out of school, the first thing, some of the things you are learning to do is you are operating in what I call 2D. So he's showing you a plan. Oh, this is the room over here. This is the washroom over here. Then he graduates to a point where he can actually show you a 3D, and that's when you can say, oh, why have you put this column here? But the highest form of architecture is when you capture the spirit of the matter. And then you determine that when you walk into this room, I want the Spirit of God to minister to you. That can be engineered through architecture. And in the olden times, we had that happen. And I'll show one or two slides very quickly on that. Let's go to the next slide. The other reason why you may need an architect is to provide detailed plans and specifications. Now, this is also related to contract, because you hire a contractor and you don't understand some of these things. And we need to specify what kind of concrete is being used, what kind of finish. You don't understand why we have written X here and Y here. It's all part of the training. So with that, we form the bridge between you and the delivery person who is the contractor. We also keep an eye on the contractor together with the team of consultants so that we can take care of the quality of workmanship. Like my engineering colleague was saying, documenting the quality of workmanship is key. So the fact that you have a permit does not guarantee that your building is going to be built well. Between the permit and having a building that is built well, you have to have the eyes on the ground to detect that right from when they are mixing the concrete that this is wrong. So together with the team, let's correct it at that stage and get it right. And of course, our network, once again, together with the other consultants, is to take care of, to know who is capable. Some people come in nice suits, smelling good, brings a Benz here, but on the ground, he's a weak contractor who just gets his way about things.